The convoy rolled through Blackthorn's gates like a funeral procession wrapped in military precision. 5 armored transports in perfect formation, their matte black surfaces drinking the afternoon light. No corps insignia. No identification markings. Just the kind of anonymous authority that made Kael's skin crawl. Fragment 2 confirmed, the frequency whispered, its voice tight with anticipation. The archive approaches. From his position on the observation deck, Kael watched the vehicles come to a synchronized stop in the main courtyard. Around him, other cadets pressed against the reinforced windows, drawn by the same morbid curiosity that made people stare at accident scenes. The lead transport's doors opened with pneumatic precision. Luka Petrov stepped out. He was everything Ghost's descriptions hadn't prepared Kael for: tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the fluid confidence of someone who'd never encountered a problem he couldn't solve. Slavic features carved from granite. Ice-blue eyes that swept the courtyard with analytical precision. Military bearing that made even veteran soldiers straighten their spines. But it was the scars that made Kael's breath catch. Scar tissue spread from Petrov's temples like spiderwebs, pale lines that pulsed faintly with their own inner light. The marks of deep integration, places where human consciousness had been carved away to make room for something else. Jesus, Ren breathed beside him. What happened to his head? The archive requires extensive neural restructuring, the frequency explained with clinical detachment. Knowledge storage demands sacrifice. More figures emerged from the transports. A full special operations team, all bearing the same 1,000-yard stare that marked veteran zone fighters. But their eyes kept drifting to Petrov with uncomfortable deference, soldiers following someone who transcended their understanding of leadership. Commander Okafor crossed the courtyard to greet them, his prosthetic arm gleaming in the sunlight. Even from this distance, Kael could see the tension in his mentor's shoulders. This wasn't a planned visit. Petrov shook Okafor's hand with easy charm, then said something that made the commander's face go rigid. Whatever words passed between them lasted less than 30 seconds, but the atmosphere in the courtyard shifted like storm pressure dropping. He's looking for me, Kael said quietly. Sable materialized at his shoulder. She'd been practicing stealth approaches all week. How do you know? Instead of answering, Kael watched Petrov's head turn toward their observation deck. Those ice-blue eyes found his through the reinforced glass, and the fragment bearer smiled. It was the smile of someone who just found exactly what he was looking for. Fascinating, the frequency murmured. The archive's host retains significant personality integration. Unusual. What's unusual about it? Fragment 2 typically consumes host consciousness within the first year. Petrov has been integrated for calculating 17 months. He should be empty by now. The implications hit Kael like ice water. Ghost had described Petrov as losing himself to the archive's knowledge flood, becoming a hollow shell driven only by alien intellect. But the man in the courtyard below radiated confidence, charisma, undeniable humanity. Either Ghost was wrong about what Petrov had become, or something far worse was happening. 5 minutes later, Kael found himself in Commander Okafor's office, facing the most dangerous person he'd ever met. Up close, Petrov was even more unsettling. The scar tissue on his temples shifted constantly, forming and reforming patterns that hurt to look at directly. But his smile was warm, genuine, the kind that made you want to trust him despite every instinct screaming warnings. Kael Morrow, Petrov said, extending his hand. His accent carried traces of Eastern Europe, but filtered through something that made each word sound like it had been perfectly calibrated for maximum impact. Finally. A sibling. The offered handshake hung in the air between them. Kael could feel the frequency vibrating with excitement, reaching out toward its counterpart with desperate hunger. Behind Petrov's eyes, something vast and alien looked back at him, not malevolent, exactly, but utterly inhuman in its scope. Accept, the frequency urged. Direct contact will initiate preliminary data exchange. I know what you're thinking, Petrov said, his hand still extended. Ghost filled your head with stories about me. Poor broken Luka, consumed by alien knowledge, murdering his way across 3 continents. His smile widened. She's not entirely wrong. But she's not entirely right either. The scar tissue on his temples pulsed brighter, and for just a moment, Kael caught a glimpse of what lay beneath Petrov's charming facade, an infinite library stretching through dimensions, knowledge beyond human comprehension, and something that might once have been a 20-year-old physics student from Prague. The archive shows me everything, Kael. Past, present, future. The real history of the fracture. What your precious core has been hiding. What's coming for all of us. Petrov's voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. We have very little time. Kael reached out and grasped the offered hand. The world exploded into white light. For one impossible second, 2 fragments touched across the gulf of broken consciousness, sharing data, memories, desperate fragments of alien thought. Kael saw/felt/remembered a vast intelligence deciding to flee, tearing through dimensional barriers with the desperation of prey animals running from predators. And in the distance of that shared memory, something moved in the darkness between worlds. Something that made the fracture look like a hairline crack in a window pane. Something that was still hunting them.